Hi, welcome back to part 4. This is Donna in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we are doing how to make a basic beginner Pysanky egg. And now we are moving on to this step, which the egg is yellow. So we're going to cover everything in our design that we want to be yellow. We've already done step 1 with our pencil, step 2 with waxing and penciling our white, and now we're moving on to the yellow. At the end of our last video, I put the egg in the yellow dye, and now I'm removing it. You need paper towel to have handy. I use Viva paper towel because it's not abrasive at all. Won't hurt your dyes or rub any of them off. You blot it, and I don't know if you saw that technique, but I'm going to go over it again because it's important. First of all, support your egg when you're putting it into the dye, and when you bring it out, once again, support it coming out. Get the paper towel over it before you even remove it from the spoon so that you never leave your egg unsupported. I also want to point out these spoons that I use. You can use any spoon. There's no question about that, except it needs to be sturdy. But these are some really sturdy slotted spoons, or I guess not slotted, but anyway, they have holes in them, draining spoons that I found on Amazon that I really like. I will give links to all of these products if you want them in the video comments. So here we are, our egg. Everything that is black that you see here actually will turn out being white in our final design. Now we're going to wax what needs to be yellow in the final design, and we're going to hand apply some green. So like I was saying earlier, a lot of times the green and blues are applied by hand if you just have a tiny bit of them, because the green and the blue do not fit into the color spectrum of these other colors and dyes. If you put it in green, then it's going to change everything. The egg will turn blue over yellow, and then you aren't going to be able to dye it another color over top of that because it won't cover the green. So we're going to hand apply the green, and for that I use these little tiny micro brushes, or you can use a tiny paintbrush. You can use a what am I trying to say? Q-tip. You can use a toothpick. Use anything you want. You just need to get it on there. So in our design here, if you look closely, there are little green dots at the end of each star point. So we don't need to draw those in first. I think everybody's capable of just applying those with dye. You also see that in the center of the star, where am I here, that there are dots. So those are yellow dots. So we're going to put that over top of the yellow, and then we're going to put wax over top of the green after we paint the green in. So here we go on that step. Got my jar of green dye here. Now here's a little tip for you. It's easier to get concentrated color once you get a little bit more advanced if you let a little bit of your dye dry out. So sometimes on the lid of the jars you maybe have some dried up dye. So I'm going to go and actually use some of this dye that's on the lid of the jar, because it's probably a little more concentrated. And I'm going to put a little green dot at the star point of each point here of this star. And if it's a little bit bigger, then you're actually going to end up covering with wax. That's okay, because eventually your black is going to cover that up. And you might want to go over this twice, because it's not the same as soaking it in dye for 5 minutes. It's much less concentrated. I'm going to go ahead and dip in the jar, just get myself a little bit more. There wasn't much on the lid of that one. I actually have some little tiny containers where I evaporate dye on purpose. So I get like a teaspoon of dye out and I put it in a little container and I just let it evaporate. So it's basically dried up dye. Then I take a paintbrush and dip it in vinegar and use that very, very concentrated dye to do my green and blue spots if I just have some spot application. So now you can see that I've made those dots. We'll give those a second to dry. And then we'll cover them with wax because we need those to stay green. And the only way we get those to stay green is if we cover them with dye. In the meantime, as long as we're careful, we can go ahead and put these dots in the center, which need to remain yellow. So once again, here's our final design. That's what we're aiming for. So you can see those dots in the center are yellow. And they look more like little teardrop shapes than dots. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do like a little teardrop shape. So we get our kistka, which is spelled K-I-S-T-K-A, by the way, kistka. It's a little bit hard for the English-speaking tongue to say, but that's how you pronounce it. Heat your tool. And you can, once again, you can draw this in or you can just go ahead and do it. These are simple things. So, and you can make them bigger or littler. There's nothing else that goes in the center of this petal or these star points. So if you want to make them bigger, you can. You can see that little tip I give it each time, and that's to get the wax flowing. It's better to have it, let's see, to have it more slow and controlled than it is to be fast and overflowing, because that's when you get glops of wax. Okay, so now we've filled in those little teardrop shapes on the interior of the egg, and those will be yellow in our final design. And now I'm going to go back and just put a dot of wax over top of each of these green dots that we made a minute ago. Try not to go on the outside of the dots. Keep your wax on the inside of the dots so that it's just over green. Otherwise, what you're going to have is a green dot with yellow around the outside of it. Now, if that's what you're aiming for, that's great. And if that's how it happened, it wouldn't matter. I mean, it still would look nice. But if you're trying to follow a specific design and want it to look the same, then keep your wax on the inside. So now we've waxed all of the green dots. And we've got our yellow on there. We're double checking our design to make sure we're not missing anything. If there's anything else that's supposed to be yellow. Nope. And actually, it looks like, now that I look at it closer, those green dots could have been a lot bigger. So if you wanted to, you can see in the final design, those green dots are a lot bigger than what I made them. But we're already done with it, so we're going to go with what we did. So now we're going to dip it into the orange dye, and we will continue with the next step.